The wind had sharp teeth that night in the Wyoming Territory. It slipped through every crack of Troy Cincaid's weathered ranch house, carrying a cold that made the boards groan. Late autumn, 1889, a time when the land felt empty and the nights stretched long and silent. Troy woke without knowing why. No dream, no fear, just a sound. A low thump, then a slow creak of wood. The barn settled often, but this was different. Too soft, too careful, too much like someone trying not to be heard. He lit his oil lantern, the warm glow pushing back the dark. His revolver hung beside the bed in its familiar place. He holstered it, pulled on his boots, shrugged into his coat, and stepped outside. The sky was black with heavy clouds. No moon. The wind rustled the frozen grass, carrying whispers across the open ground. Troy's lantern carved a small circle of gold in the night as he walked toward the granary. As he rounded the corner, he saw movement. A woman crouched beside a rough wooden cart near the back wall. Her dark hair was wet, clinging to her face. Her coat was thin and torn at the hem. She held the edge of the cart with both hands, as if steadying herself. Behind her stood two children wrapped in old blankets. A boy around 10, a girl who looked no older than 6. Their cheeks were red from the cold, but neither cried. Their silence was the kind that came from long fear. Troy lifted the lantern higher. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady in the quiet. The woman did not beg or flinch. She looked up at him with tired eyes that held no panic, only exhaustion. "Can you take us to town?" she said. The question hung in the cold air like frost. Troy looked at the wooden crates in the cart, 3 of them roughly nailed shut. Then at the children who huddled close but did not speak. They stood like kids who had already learned too much about danger. "Town is 5 miles, he said. "You planning to walk in the dark?" "We were," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. Troy stepped closer, lowering the lantern. "What's in the crates?" he asked. "Everything worth saving," she said. "And that's all I can say for now." Her hand moved gently to the boy's shoulder, steadying him. The little girl gripped her coat, eyes wide. Troy studied her. She didn't look like a thief. She looked like someone running from something too big to fight alone. After a long moment, he nodded. "I'll take you," he said. "Only if you promise to come back home." The woman blinked, almost surprised by the word home, but she nodded once. "My name is Maria." "Troy Cincaid," he replied. She stepped aside so he could take the cart handle. With one steady pull, he lifted it and walked toward the house. The children followed right behind him. Maria walked last, watching them with a look that mixed fear and protectiveness. Inside, he lit the fireplace. Warmth slowly spread across the room. The children curled up near the flames without a sound. Troy brought them thick blankets from a cedar chest. Maria sat in a chair by the window, her hands clasped tight, her eyes always moving. "I'll take you to town at first light," Troy said. "Thank you," she whispered. He leaned against the mantel, arms crossed. "You've got secrets, Maria. I can see that. If you're running from something, 5 miles in the dark is better than staying still." She looked down at her lap. "Thank you for not asking why." Her voice was small but steady. Outside, the wind howled again. Inside, the house felt strange and full. Troy had lived alone for years, yet tonight, with strangers sleeping near his fire, the place felt less lonely than it had in a long time. Before dawn, he hitched the wagon. Frost covered the ground, thick and white. Ben and Sadie, the names Maria quietly shared, climbed into the back and wrapped themselves beneath the blankets. Maria sat beside Troy on the wagon seat. Her shoulders were rigid beneath an old shawl. Her eyes stayed forward, watching the road. As the wagon rolled across the frozen dirt, Troy spoke quietly. "You got a husband." Maria kept her gaze on the horizon. "Dead." He nodded. That better than if he was alive. Her voice was barely a breath. "Yes." Troy didn't ask anything else. Some answers lived in silence. They rode on, Lantern swung lightly with each bump. Shadows moved across the trees. The horses trotted steady and strong. As the faint lights of Dry Creek appeared far ahead, Troy slowed the horses. He looked at Maria from the corner of his eye. Thin coat, tired face, eyes carrying storms she hadn't told him about. Whatever this woman was running from had weight. And whatever she had hidden in those crates was more than simple belongings. Troy didn't understand her story yet, but he knew something with a certainty that surprised him. She wasn't a stranger anymore, and the trouble behind her was only beginning. The sky brightened slowly as Troy guided the wagon toward Dry Creek. Frost cracked beneath the wheels. The land around them felt cold and still, as if holding its breath. Maria sat beside him, wrapped in the wool blanket he had given her. She kept her eyes forward. Her hands stayed tight in her lap, as if letting go might break her. Ben and Sadie slept in the back, curled under layers of old cloth, their breaths small and steady. Troy watched the road ahead before speaking. "Your husband," he said quietly. "Where is he?" Maria didn't look at him. "Dead." Troy nodded. "Better than alive." Her voice was soft. "Yes." He didn't ask more. Some truths didn't need explaining. The wagon lantern swung gently with each bump, casting faint shadows through the tall trees. The cold bit at their cheeks. The horses kept a steady pace, their breath rising in white clouds. As they reached a bend in the road, Troy pulled the reins. "We'll stop here for a moment," he said. Maria climbed down with slow steps. A narrow stream trickled beside the road, half frozen but still alive. She knelt and splashed water onto her face. Her shoulders shook lightly, not just from the cold. Troy stepped aside, giving her space but keeping his eyes on her. She carried something heavy inside her, heavier than the crates in the back of the wagon. Maria returned to the wagon and lifted the lid on one of the crates. The hinges made a soft groan. Inside lay bundled papers, letters tied with string, faded photographs, and a worn ledger. Beneath them was a pouch partly open, showing gold coins. At the bottom was a folder marked with names written carefully in ink. She lifted the folder just enough to see the first page. Then she froze. Troy had walked up behind her, his lantern light falling over the contents. Maria closed the crate quickly and secured the latch. "I do not steal," she said with quiet strength. "These belong to me or to people who never got the chance to keep them." Troy didn't move. "I didn't say you did." "You thought it," she whispered. "I think a lot of things," he replied. "But none of that matters more than those kids sleeping back there. You're carrying something heavier than wood, Maria. Anyone can see it." She looked toward the children. "I only need a few days," she said, "to finish what I started. After that, I will disappear if I have to." Troy shook his head. "We'll see what happens after we get you to town." He helped her back onto the wagon. Maria didn't speak, but her breath came easier than before. As they rode on, the pale lights of Dry Creek came into view. Lanterns glowed in windows. Smoke drifted from chimneys. The town was just waking. Troy stopped the wagon in front of the small white chapel at the edge of town. "We'll start here," he said. Maria followed him inside, carrying one of the crates. The chapel was warm from an early fire. Reverend Whitlock answered the door before they knocked. Thin, sharp-eyed, and older than his years, he looked at Maria with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Well, Troy Cincaid," he said, "you bringing saints or sinners today?" "Neither," Troy replied. "Just someone who needs safekeeping." Maria placed the crate near a pew and lifted the lid. Whitlock's eyes widened slightly at the sight of ledgers and letters. "You need this hidden," he said. "Yes," she answered. "From the wrong kind of law." Whitlock closed the crate gently. "I'll keep it safe." Troy carried the children to the boarding house and paid for a quiet room. Maria watched every doorway and every shadow, alert even when she sat still. When the children settled, Troy stepped closer to her. "What now?" he asked. Maria took a slow breath. "I need to speak to someone." "Who?" The sheriff. Troy stiffened. That a good idea? No, Maria said, but it is necessary. He didn't argue. I'll wait outside. The sheriff's office was 2 streets away. Maria walked toward it alone, her shoulders straight, though fear touched the corners of her eyes. Troy waited across the road, watching the door. Minutes stretched into an hour, then another. The sun rose higher in the sky. Dust lifted with each passing wagon. At last, Maria stepped out. Her steps were slow, her face pale. Her scarf pulled tight around her neck. Troy reached her in 3 long strides. What happened? She lifted her sleeve. A deep bruise marked her forearm. He wanted fear, she said softly. I wouldn't give it. Troy's jaw tightened. You want me to go in there? She shook her head. He already knew the truth. He just needed to remind me what the cost of speaking is. They walked back to the boarding house. The children waited inside. Sadie ran into Maria's arms. Ben stayed close to Troy, watching with quiet worry. We're going to need more than luck, Maria said. Troy nodded. You have more than luck. You have me. She didn't smile, but her shoulders eased. Something in the room shifted, something quiet, but strong. The bruise on her arm was only the beginning. The letters in the crate held truth. A truth that powerful men wanted. Buried. Maria had run far. But trouble had finally found her trail, and Troy Cincaid was not about to let it take her. The ride back to the ranch after visiting the sheriff felt colder than the wind itself. Maria sat stiff beside Troy, her bruised arm hidden beneath her shawl. Ben and Sadie slept in the back of the wagon, unaware of the danger following close behind. Sheriff Warrow's warning echoed in Troy's head. I won't forget your face. Back at the ranch, Maria moved through the rooms like a shadow, quiet, watchful, strong. Troy saw the fear she hid and the strength she didn't show on purpose. That night, the wind moaned through the cottonwoods. Troy stepped outside to check the horses. As he rounded the porch, he found Maria sitting on the steps with a lantern beside her. The warm glow softened the worry on her face. He sat next to her. For a long time they didn't speak. Finally, Maria said, You asked why I had to leave. I'll tell you. Not for pity, just because you deserve the truth. Troy waited. I was born in Louisiana. I married young. My husband Henry Monroe looked perfect to everyone. Money. Manners. A smile for every preacher. But behind closed doors he was building something dark. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. I handled the ledgers. I liked numbers. He let me see some of the books because he thought I wouldn't understand the rest. But one day I opened the wrong ledger. I saw fake names, money going to places they called rehabilitation centers. But they weren't centers. They were camps for women, girls, mostly the poor and forgotten. Troy's face hardened. One of the routes passed near here. A map with red dots showed cabins where women went missing. I took what I could. Ledgers, photographs, letters. I took Ben, my son, and Sadie. Her mother died trying to escape. She asked me to save her. Maria pulled a folded paper from her coat and handed it to him. 12 names, ages, notes written in haste. 5 of them are dead, she whispered. One was Ida Langley. You knew her. Troy remembered. Ida had worked the peach fields. She vanished without a goodbye. Why aren't you arrested? Troy asked. Because if I disappear before I testify, everything dies with me. They don't need to kill me. They just need me silent. Suddenly, the sound of quick hoofbeats cut through the night. Troy stood, hand on his revolver. That wasn't one of our horses. He stepped off the porch, eyes on the tree line. If they come, Maria, I won't wait to ask questions. Maria stayed still, arms hugging herself. Moments later, she went inside and returned with a wooden crate. She placed it between them and opened it. Inside were letters, photos, maps, marked in red ink. Evidence enough to change lives. Troy looked at it, then at her. We'll keep these safe, and we'll keep you safe. Maria's voice was soft. I've never trusted a man with a gun, but tonight I'm not afraid of yours. Troy didn't take his eyes off the dark woods. Good. The next man who comes after you won't get a second chance. In the days that followed, Troy rode out each morning to send copies of the documents to a friend in Denver who could help. Life at the ranch shifted into something close to normal. Maria mended clothes. Ben practiced rope tying. Sadie brushed the pony with small, gentle hands. Then Lucius Gray arrived. He rode in like he owned the land. Tall, calm, smiling like danger wrapped in silk. He dismounted and brushed dust from his coat. "Well now," he drawled. "My sister-in-law. Been a long road for you." Maria's jaw clenched. "What do you want, Lucius?" Came for what Henry left behind. "You took things that don't belong to you." Troy stepped between them. "She has nothing for you." Lucius tilted his head. "A ranch hand playing hero. How fitting." "I don't play," Troy said. Lucius leaned close. "One call to the sheriff, and this whole place turns ugly. Folks around here disappear all the time. Nobody asks many questions." He mounted his horse again. "I'll give her 2 days. After that, it won't be a conversation." He rode off, leaving the threat behind like a storm cloud. That night, Troy checked every lock and window. He kept his rifle ready. He didn't sleep. Neither did Maria. By morning, they made a decision. They would fight, not run. Maria would take the documents to a federal judge in Carver's Bluff. Troy would go with her. The children stayed with a trusted friend. In Carver's Bluff, the judge listened. Papers were filed. Then Lucius arrived with a deputy and called Maria unstable, claiming the documents were stolen. But the judge refused to dismiss her words and set a hearing for 2 days. They fled before nightfall, knowing Lucius wouldn't wait. They hid in an old warehouse owned by Elijah Croft, a former war medic and friend of Troy's. It was cold but safe, until Troy didn't return one night. He had gone to get food. He was late, too late. Maria found him near the rail yard, slumped against a broken wheelbarrow. Blood soaked his shirt. A bullet had torn through his shoulder. She dragged him back to the warehouse. She cleaned the wound with shaking hands. Troy didn't scream, but his jaw was tight with pain. "This happened because of me," she whispered. Troy caught her hand. "You didn't bring danger, Maria. You brought purpose." Tears filled her eyes. He touched her face. "You're not running anymore. You're fighting. And you're not alone." Maria leaned in, their foreheads touching. "When this is over, if I still have a place, it's wherever you're standing." He kissed her then, soft and sure. 3 months later, the trial was won. Lucius Gray was arrested. Maria's name was cleared. She didn't return to the city. She stayed at the Cincaid ranch. Troy became guardian of the children. Maria's laughter filled the rooms again. One warm afternoon, she walked onto the porch where Troy fixed a saddle. "Can you take us to town?" she asked gently. Troy looked up with a slow smile. "Only if you promise to come back home." Sadie grabbed Maria's hand. Ben ran to the wagon. Maria sat beside Troy as the horses started moving. She looked back at the ranch and whispered, "I used to think home was a place you could lose." "And now?" Troy asked. She smiled softly. "Now I know home is where someone waits for you to return." Their story was no longer a tale of running. It was a story of coming home,